Hello, everyone. We are so glad that you have joined us today for episode 2 of Strong Disciples. We're talking about the heart and the how of discipleship. And I'm so excited for today because we're joined again by Pastor Sam and Pastor Hannah Long. How are you guys? You doing well?
We are very well.
Everyone's clapping right now. Live audience in the
I
background.
hear
It's
it.
so good to have you guys.
It's resounding.
Yes. How's life been since the last episode?
Look, as of this date, we are now officially kid-free during the week.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing. Our twins are at school as of a couple of weeks ago, which is incredible. So we dropped them off at school. Season graduated.
Kid-free.
Kid-free. It's
Kid-free
pretty amazing.
Monday.
Went and had some lunch.
Wow.
Sat in the car.
Yep.
No music on.
Wow.
Just silence.
Just silence.
It's
Yep.
amazing.
That sounds incredible. I don't have kids yet, but I'm sure it's incredible. Now, I did hear that there was something that the school that the kids go to like to do on their first year of school, and that is to hand them back to you every Wednesday for 6 weeks. Is that true?
It's literally torture. So we've waited 5 years for this moment.
Yeah.
for the
It's
kids
only
to go to
partial
school.
freedom.
And then they go Monday and Tuesday. They give them back to us Wednesday. And then we take them back Thursday and Friday. So just when you thought you had your freedom,
Yeah. Right in the middle of the week.
you love it though. You're all about it.
It's so awkward because I can't talk until I have this thing. Look, the thing is they're just babies. So they're tired on Wednesday. Like Shiloh's teacher said to us, she slept through science. She fell asleep on the ground, Shiloh. And so
Not
we
the
just had
teacher.
to kind of walk around her and work,
Oh no.
So
Yep.
they definitely need the Wednesday off. They're pretty cranky. They're trying to adjust. So
Yeah.
they've got 2 days and then rest day and then 2 days. But Leo is like, I think he's going to struggle going 5 days
Yeah.
because he
okay.
lives for the rest day.
That's so funny.
He lives for it.
That is so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So when does that technically stop? Is that only a couple of weeks away and then they're full time?
Yeah, we have 2 weeks left, I think. 2 weeks. So this week and next week. And then I think the only reason Sam is spiteful of the Wednesday
Spiteful.
is because
What a
that
word.
is going to be our day off.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just kind of knocked out the rhythm.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, but I think you do love them and you do miss them.
There you
Yeah.
go. Exciting times in the
Yeah,
Long
exciting.
household. School. Do the kids love school?
Yes.
Yep.
They do love it. I think they love it, but they don't think they love it.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense. They do love it because they come home happy and they have friends.
Yeah.
They got great teachers. But I think it's just the discipline of like, I have to sit here and do work. That's the only thing that I don't
okay.
like.
Yeah. Big change.
Big change.
Yeah. Yeah.
But great school.
Nah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Big change in the Long household. Exciting times. Exciting times. And we just finished our relationship series here at Nova as well.
We did.
How did you guys find that? What are your thoughts around it?
It's the best. We do it every year.
Yeah.
It's just a conviction because I think, for some reason the church is, well, generally pretty afraid of talking about sex and relationships
Yep.
and
So
dating
true.
and all that stuff. And then we wonder why it gets so crazy in churches and why people are kind of doing all this funky stuff. And so we just had that conviction probably ever since we were youth pastors, actually. Of just like,
Wow.
we need to talk about this every single year.
Yeah.
And every year we do it, it's amazing. Like, you'd think, it's not necessarily, a topic you would think people would get saved around, but it's quite amazing that every time we do it, we see so many people saved, come to
Yeah.
Christ.
Yeah.
Because there's something like people are just starving for truth.
It's so true.
And
Yeah.
they're just like, there's so much noise. People are watching so much junk on like Netflix,
Yeah.
and TikTok, and Instagram, and Reels, and everything. And it's just, I think there's so much confusion out there that whenever
Yeah.
you just speak with clarity and boldness, something inside people just resonates.
So true.
And yeah,
So
it's
true.
probably one of the most fruitful things we do
Yeah.
every year at the church. And it's so much fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So
Definitely is. Definitely is. Well,
Yeah.
we had a great weekend at Nova. It was awesome. All services
Yes.
packed, which is
Yes.
great. But what we're going to talk about today, I'm really intrigued by, and I'm really excited to talk about it. We're actually going to call this episode, and we've titled it, We Replanted Our Church. Now, that's a big title, a big caption. And there's a lot of stories around it as well. So we're going to dive into some stories today, but we're going to go right back to when Nova first started. In fact, let's start even before that. I want to talk about today the very start of Nova and where we find ourselves today as a discipleship, soul-winning church. But how did we get there? I want to go through the journey of that today and a couple of the massive milestones or the big moments that really shifted certain things in our church. But I wanted to go back and I wanted to ask you guys, what are some of the earliest memories that you have of Nova Church?
Okay. Well, probably my earliest memory when I think of the church and the whole journey, I don't know what yours would be, but I think one of my most early memories was actually before we even moved to Adelaide, and we decided we were doing this thing. I remember us really talking about, like, what is this? I mean, there's so much unknown, right? There's like, who's going to come to this? What's it going to look like? What's it going to be called? Or we're debating about the name. This is a funny story. I don't actually think we've ever shared this before, but
Here we go.
I actually wanted to call the church Culture Shapers Church.
Wow.
And Hannah really disagreed with that.
Thank you, Pastor Hannah. Thank you, Pastor Hannah.
Because like, we're going to shape the culture. It's going to be Culture Shapers Church. And Hannah's like, that's so lame. And anyway, our youth ministry was called Nova at the time. And she's like, no, we couldn't call it anything else but that because it's our DNA. It's a new move of God. God's doing a new thing. And it just felt right. You really gave me a hard time about that, actually. You were very adamantly against that.
Oh, yeah, I was like, no, our church isn't about culture. It's about Jesus.
Come on.
So I don't know. I just hated it. But I'm glad we didn't call it
Tell
that
us
now.
how
And
you really
I
feel.
think that you also are glad that we didn't call it that. Yeah. But, yeah, I think that was one of the first names, even before we were dating, that you were like, one day I want to call my church that. And I think that's, anyway. But our pastors, you know, the ones that we spoke about last.
Yep.
Yeah. This is how good they are, is that when we moved and we not straight away when we moved because we didn't plant immediately. But when we moved to Adelaide, I remember him saying, do you want the name? Because if you want the name, you can have it. And then they renamed their youth ministry and they renamed their whole church, but they let us take the name.
Oh, that's so awesome.
So Nova, I'm so glad we called it Nova.
That's so good. So good. Now, we're talking about before the church was planted.
Mm-hmm.
What are some other key moments within that phase? Because I'm sure that we have a lot of people listening and watching right now that are probably in those early stages of believing and dreaming of planting a church. What are some of those really key moments that before you even open the doors of the first gathering, what are some of those key moments that really made a difference? Yeah.
Well, Sam is incredibly good at vision and seeing things before they are, you know, like he's so good at that. Not my gifting at all. I'm like, what's the vision? And I can run with it. But Sam is visionary to his core. And so I remember one time, I don't even remember exactly when it was, but it was before we planted, and we went to somewhere in the hills and we went to a cafe, and he was like, you know what, let's just write down everything that we see and everything that we want our church to be.
Wow.
Not what the reality will be like immediately, but just say 10, 20 years down the track when we look at our church, like when you walk through the doors, like what do we want to be able to see?
Wow.
So that we can build towards that. And so we spent the afternoon at that cafe and we wrote everything down, and then he made it sound good, you know, with the way that the words work and all of that. I remember that was napkins. That's probably my very first memory of ever really investing anything. I also remember before we even moved, I remember one time we had just got married, and Sam came home and he was like, Hannah, we need to buy this domain. Is that called a domain? Yeah, sorry. I don't know much.
Yeah.
He was like, we need to buy this domain. And I was like, okay, what is that and why and all of that stuff? And it was the Nova Church. Oh, what is it? NovaChurch.com. He's like, you don't want to have .au at the end. You don't want to have blah, blah, blah. He's like, and someone has it and we need to buy it, and we need to buy it now. And I was like, we cannot afford that. And that was like $2,000 or something we had to pay. Oh, okay. He wants to tell the story.
There's
Okay,
a story.
tell the story.
Okay, the story is, and domain real estate is actually very important. Very hard to get a good domain address.
Write that one
So
down.
yeah,
church
write that down.
planters.
Take that. That's for free. So novachurch.com was for sale, but the guy had listed it for $30,000. Right.
Wow.
So
Okay.
and I'm like, this is crazy. So I spent literally 12 months harassing this guy, emailing him again and again to keep knocking the price down, and I got him down to $1,000.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So Hannah and I drew that out of our savings and bought novachurch.com for $1,000.
So you had a napkin and a domain.
Yes. So the manifesto, which is what we called the vision statement,
Yep.
was written on napkins at that cafe, and we still have the napkins. And we had a domain, which I was pretty pumped about, man. I'm like, this is a good deal. I haggled this guy down. I don't want a .au.
No.
I don't want a .co.
No.
I don't want a .church.
Yeah. Why
I
would you
want
want those? .com. All day long. That's what they say.
Yeah. So there's a couple of formative memories
That's awesome.
pre-starting.
That's
Yeah.
so good. Now, zooming forward a little bit, let's talk about our first gatherings as a church,
Yes.
bringing people into your home. I remember I'm honoured enough to be part of that crew from Crichton Avenue.
You were there.
And I remember hearing the stories of you guys in the afternoon. You guys would be shifting out all your furniture from the lounge room, putting it in your garage. And how old was Gabe at the time? Gabe would have been so young.
Gabe was probably 1. Yeah.
Yeah, one.
Yeah, he was about 1.
Yeah. And I remember hearing you say, Pastor Hannah, that you'd literally like sit him in the lounge room and you guys would be moving everything and it'd just be watching you guys do it all. And then that night, you'd literally open your doors to whoever really felt on their heart to come and see what Nova was about. And literally you guys had strangers rocking up to your living room in the early stages of this church plant before we'd even had a gathering or anything. But talk us through a couple of key moments or even just like what it felt like in that living room when you guys were sharing the first lot of vision to a bunch of strangers, really. There were some family, there were some close friends, but so many strangers walked through those doors over those weeks.
It was pretty hectic. Like we'd just bought our first house in Adelaide. Like that was something we really were trying to do as a young couple and had just kind of saved every penny we'd had and bought this tiny little townhouse. I mean, it was tiny, hey. I don't even, how many square meters was that? It was 89 square meters.
Wow.
So it's a tiny little place.
Yep.
And every, when we started those gatherings kind of every week, like the biggest room we had in the house was the living room. And that had our TV and our lounges and our kitchen and our dining table all in that little place. And to be able to fit everyone in, we'd pull the table out, the lounges out, the TV out, everything out, and put it all in our garage. And then we bought, I think it was about 20 or so, like chairs, foldable chairs from IKEA.
Shout out IKEA.
Thank you, IKEA.
Come on.
$15 each. And can I actually say those chairs are still going strong?
They've lasted.
They do make an appearance.
They're all over Adelaide as well. Everyone's got at least one or two in their garage, I'm
They are
sure.
scattered in homes across the city.
Yep.
And we pull those out. And literally, I mean, like all we had was a crew of guys that were, that some of them had moved from Murray Bridge up. Some of them were like you in Adelaide and had just kind of known us and felt the call to be a part of this. So there was some kind of known guys there, but I mean, by and large, we put up Instagram posts and, retrospectively, like not amazing wisdom with small children in your house, but give everyone our address.
Crazy.
And people just started knocking on the door and rocking up to the house. And it's a crazy thing because, like a lot of guys kind of came in that season that are still at church today, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it was just powerful. Like we really had nothing. We had, we had napkins and the domain name and a small team and some IKEA chairs in the living room. But we had the call of God.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's something just significant. Like I remember thinking to myself, why would anyone come? I'm like, I remember us talking about this, like everyone coming is driving past 100 good churches to get to this
Wow.
one. So why? Like there's better music, and there's, churches with better music, there's churches with better facilities, there's churches with facilities. There's churches with like padded seats that are so comfortable you could have a nap on them. Why would anyone drive all that, like past all these amazing churches to come to our little house and be part of this? And it just didn't make sense. But I know what it was, and it was that sense that God was doing it.
Yeah.
And we knew that God had called us to it, and we knew that this was in the heart of God.
Yeah.
But also I think it's just that sense of adventure.
Yeah.
That that desire of like, we want to be part of a move of God. We want to be part of something that could just go anywhere and be amazing. And so, every week, man, people would knock on the door, rock up, knock on the door, rock up, until that place was full.
Yeah. And we filled the overflow room, the back garden.
Yes.
The 2 square meter back garden. We filled that. And it was crazy. It was such a great time to be a part of. And we outgrew that. And then we moved on to Marion's studio.
Yes.
Which Marion's studio was a whole nother level. That was our first actual gathering place in terms of a larger facility. But Pastor Hannah, what are some of your memories around Marion's studio in Hindmarsh? Any funny memories you can think of? Any core memories that you can think of?
Yes, lots of memories, lots of blood, sweat, and tears. I think we were really excited because I think obviously at our house, it was tiny. It was not something that we could do forever. And it was interesting because it was like, we're doing this in faith, like again, that manifesto statement of, we're like in our living room, and what we see is like a church that's expansive and it has explosive energy, and it's like, these are all strangers, and like we have an acoustic guitar, and it's awkward and it's weird. So when we first got our first venue that we were in, we were so excited. Like we were very, very excited, but it was like a lot of work. And I remember we would have our team over at our house in the morning, and we would have breakfast, and we would pray, and we would, just talk logistics and all of that. And then we would bump in from like, I reckon it was 9 o'clock in the morning. So we'd just get to work with because we had a storage shed as well that had all of our screens and our speakers and everything. So every week we'd need to go, and we'd have to load up. I think we'd do 2 or 3 loads with a rental van, and go and pick up everything and do the loads and start to set up the screens, the stage. The worship team would like screw together the stage, and work really hard. And so then rehearsals would start at like 3 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock. And then so by the time the service started at 4, everyone was like, so tired, like super, super tired. We would do the service, and then we'd start bump out and the 3 loads out again. And I just remember it being conviction that held us to do what we were called to do, in the sense that the grind really starts to get to you, and you're filled with vision at the beginning, and then you're like, okay, wow, this is like that we're really building. This is really hard.
Yeah.
And so that was week after week after week, and lots of roadblocks, like lots of double bookings, lots of times we'd, roll into Marion's studio and there'd been a 21st there before, and there's vomit all over the floor, and there's like party food left over, and just random stuff like that. The floor would be sticky sometimes. You'd be like squelching around.
Yeah.
But it was definitely, that's when our faith really started to kick in, and we had to really lean on our convictions of what God had called us to do, no matter how it felt or whether we felt inspired to do it or not. Because that's where as well we officially launched, and then I was pregnant with our twins. And so just the energy,
crazy.
In that as well was like very tricky. There was definitely times, because all of our resource was so limited.
Yeah.
And so for right up until I think I was I must have been like right up until 4 or 5 weeks before I had the babies, I was worship leading because I had nobody else. So
Wow.
I would worship lead, and I think with the twins, I just always felt like I was going to faint, like because the circulation to my brain wasn't there. And so I would worship lead and I'd be so tired. So then when Sam would preach, and I thought it was secret, but I think he just knew. But I would go backstage and I would lie down on this dingy couch that I would find, and I would sleep while he. And then when I hear him ramping up towards the end, I'd get up again and I would go and do
The alarm.
Yeah, the alarm. And I would go and do the ministry time. But yeah, just hard work, like super hard work.
Yeah.
But beautiful memories.
Yeah. Marion's was something else, hey? The bump in, the bump out. Yeah. That was like church planting at its core that you hear about, all that kind of stuff. Do you have any memories you want to talk about, Pastor Sam?
Yeah, I just think, there were so many special things too, like a lot of guys coming, not in droves. It never felt like droves. It was just ones and twos.
Yeah.
But every week there was people coming, getting saved, and things like our first baptism, like that was like such a huge deal.
Yeah.
Like I remember the first time we inflated the jacuzzi out the front of a shed and were baptizing, really key people in our church, like, who are, massive carriers today. But they're so significant and just super special. And it was actually pretty funny. Like Marion's studio was just up the road from like a really, what should I say, rough institution.
That's a great way to put it.
So man, we just had some wild cats walking in. Like I remember one time we had a guy we called Simon the Sorcerer, and I don't know if you remember Simon, but
I remember Simon.
Simon the Sorcerer would rock up and leave spells.
Yep.
All around the church.
Yes,
He'd
would
write little spells and curses and just leave them around the church.
That's crazy to think about, isn't it? That's crazy.
You're like, oh, okay, the wizard's
Simon.
back.
Shout out Simon.
We had crazy stuff. I remember one time halfway through the service, like someone snuck behind the stage and stole everyone's laptops.
Yep.
And then ran out, jumped on his bike, and then we were chasing him by car.
Crazy.
On a bike, trying to get everyone's laptops back. I think it was your wife's laptop.
Yeah,
that got stolen,
my wife
actually.
Emma lost her laptop that day. But we gained a good story. But
just stuff like that, man. There was just always something going on. It was just hectic.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. So we had Marion's.
Yep.
So we had Crichton, we had Marion's. Then we moved into O'Connell Street Cinema. Walk us through that, because that was a massive move, especially in the context of everything that was going on. We're talking like COVID. We're talking like young people coming to church, starting to walk through those doors. We're talking like so many different dynamics. And we've moved into what was a 350-seated cinema, I believe.
Yeah.
Walk us through that. So we've gone from Marion's, which was a warehouse, into a cinema with a bunch of young adults that are on fire for God. What are some of the feelings that you had walking into O'Connell that first Sunday?
Well, it was like basically the only reason. So we started in 2019.
Yep.
So the only reason we were even able to get the cinema was because of COVID.
Yeah.
So
wow.
COVID happened. I mean, we didn't even speak about that, but I mean, that was wild because our church was so young and we were just starting to get momentum. And then, then I became a televangelist and it was really exciting.
Nova now.
Actually, we recorded the sermons in our garage.
That's right.
And our amazing budget enabled us to have a singular coloured piece of paper on the wall, which was yellow, which made me look like I had liver failure, by the way. Thanks, Davo. And I would preach to the camera, and there was like Davo was standing there behind the camera watching me, and he never laughed at my jokes, Jordan, not once. It's very difficult. Just stood there. And it was really encouraging. It's like a lot of responsiveness, a lot of amens. I felt edified.
Felt loved.
I felt loved. And then we would have to, our neighbour, we could only record it on Saturdays, and our neighbour would always mow his lawn. So we had to record in between him, like doing his lawn, like he'd stop for 10 minutes and then we'd hit record and then he'd go again. It's just, honestly, it was outrageous. By some miracle, when all that finished, like the church had doubled when we came back.
Wow.
So the first time we came back after COVID, the church had there's all these people that had been watching online. Yeah. And I have no idea why they were watching online because our live stream was trash. It was so bad. Like, I mean, I love you and you're like a phenomenal worship leader, but all of it just sounded so bad. It sounded like cats being run over slowly. It was
But
tough.
the cats were Christian.
They were
at
Christian
least.
cats. Yeah, they were saved.
Oh wait, can cats be Christian?
Nah,
Don't
actually,
believe so.
we know that. We know the other guy made those ones.
That's right.
But yeah, the church had actually done really well over that season, despite how hard it was. And essentially, like, I remember our first venue, Marry in the Studio, was costing us like, I think it was $350 a week.
Yep.
And that was like everything we could muster to afford.
Yeah.
Because you got to understand, like, our church was teenagers.
Yep.
Even saying young adults was like a bit of a stretch because
true.
everyone was pretty much 17, 18.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like there was no resource really at all. Like we probably would have been the biggest givers at the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just really difficult. But we'd outgrown the studio. So it was like, we got to figure out, we need to go to a bigger venue.
Yeah.
And so the silver lining of COVID for us was that the cinema, this really big cinema on O'Connell Street that you were talking about, that was available, and so we lowballed them so hard.
Like the domain guy.
Yeah, mate, I'm the king of lowball. Let me tell you. Just
come on.
I just have a rule: never say someone's no for them.
That's great.
Right?
Write that down.
Yeah.
Write that down.
Clip it. Nah, but never say someone's no for them. So we just went to him. I said, "Look, we'll give you $400 a week for this 350."
And we want it all. We want
cinema.
the whole building.
Yeah, we want it. And this is the crazy thing. I reckon they were just so desperate at the time because who's going to the movies during COVID?
Yeah, it's true.
But they said yes.
Yeah.
So we moved into this massive, epic venue on O'Connell Street, and it really like took the church from being on the back streets in a seedy shed near a very shady institution with Simon the Sorcerer to one of the main streets in Adelaide. For those who don't know, but O'Connell Street's a really popular street in Adelaide. So moved the church there, and really like that was just a great season of momentum. I mean, it was kind of awkward because we had about probably 80 people, I'm going to say, in a 350-seat auditorium. Yeah. So we had to buy these massive banners, and
I remember the banners.
We had them like all the way down, I think there was 3 rows visible.
Yep. That's right.
In that cinema. But every week we just moved the banner back. As God kept filling it, seeing people saved and people coming to the church. It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
And we could talk about how even in that season, God making a way and opening up a door for our North location out in Ingle Farm as well. But then I really want to center this more so around the journey that you guys have taken as lead pastors through all of this. Because after the cinemas, there was a massive battle for our city location, which we're filming in today, which is an amazing story, which I think we could do a whole episode on purely that story. But kind of just to put it into a couple of words or a couple of sentences, we moved into Carrington, which is where we are now, which was a massive testimony. But how did you feel moving into Carrington after the cinema experience? Actually taking some ground, actually like this is Nova City's location. It's not just like a rented cinema, but we're actually here and we're here for good. We're taking territory for the kingdom. How did that feel? Do you remember the first Sunday in Carrington by any chance? And how are you feeling?
Yes.
No, I've forgotten everything.
Nah, it's gone. Wasn't a big deal. No, it was such a big deal.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I think sometimes like we can get excited about buildings for the wrong reason.
Yeah, true.
So like, it's significant to have your own place or your own building. And I think maybe pastors can get too caught up in facilities and stuff like that. I think for us, the biggest thing and probably the biggest burden and reason why we wanted to have our own place was because every week at the cinema, essentially like what would happen was the service would finish and then you've got to rip everything down.
Yeah.
No one's getting to spend time with each other.
Yeah.
No one's getting to like have a spiritual home. So
true.
for us, like I think, yes, we're pastors, but our heart, and we're going to do like a whole thing on this, but like our heart has always been to be a spiritual mother and father.
Yeah.
Now I'm actually not a spiritual mother. That would be Hannah.
Great.
Just to clarify.
Thanks for the clarification.
But our heart is like, we want to be mothers and fathers in faith.
Yeah.
And so like what dad doesn't want a home for his kid?
Yeah, so true.
Like that would be like negligent. And so one of my I think, chief responsibilities as the father of the house is to have a home that our spiritual sons and daughters can thrive in. You know? And I think, like, for me, actually the highlight of that first Sunday that we had in our own building wasn't, the service was amazing and it was packed to the rafters and we're all crying and it was just amazing.
Yeah.
But actually the coolest moment was after the service when it had all finished and we just pulled out all these tables and everyone had gone to Chinatown and gotten takeaway and was just hanging out and eating and laughing.
Yeah.
And I just remember like just watching it and just being so moved because I was like, man, like we've actually got a place to build family, a home for people to belong, somewhere they can come midweek, a place where they're going to like walk in and go, I could point to all these encounters of God I had here, and these moments that changed my life. And I think that ultimately was the heart behind it. Like, yes, it saves time with bumpy and there's 1,000 practical reasons of why having your own place is so good. But I think having a home for our sons and daughters in the faith, that's the most important thing.
Oh, that's amazing. So good. I love that we've got Carrington. It's incredible. And, you know, God is really on the move here at Nova, which is so exciting. And we've talked about a bit of an overview of the journey of Nova, but obviously we've titled this episode, We Replanted Our Church. And the reason that we're going to talk about that now is because there were certain moments along that journey. In fact, there were probably some really pivotal core moments that really shifted and changed everything for the DNA of Nova. And what we wanted to do was we actually wanted to give some time to talk around what Nova is now to what Nova used to be. And, you know, we hear all these incredible stories of God filling living rooms and warehouses and cinemas and this and that. But along that journey, there was this launch of Strong Disciples, which is our discipleship pathway here. And there were a couple of other major shifts in terms of from you guys as our lead pastors and so many changes. But I want to kind of dive into for just a moment what makes Nova different now to what it was at the start. You know, you mentioned the manifesto on the napkin, which is so amazing and so powerful. And what's incredible is I'd love for you guys to speak on this maybe in another episode, but how you're seeing the manifesto lived out now. But what was the biggest shift that you guys have had to make along the journey of planting Nova? Because we're talking about we replanted our church. What does that mean to you guys? And when did that happen?
I think a lot of it was birthed out of, honestly, like frustration and probably some bad information as well.
Wow.
So
okay.
I think, you know, we got 12 months into it and, you know, like the services were growing, but the people weren't.
Wow.
And I think for us as the pastors, we were like, this is really frustrating because I can see the runway that if we just keep growing numerically, but the people themselves aren't growing in depth, we're gonna end up with something we really don't like.
Yeah.
And I remember in prayer, like really going after the Lord in this season because I'm trying to figure this out. Like, God, what's wrong with our church? Because something's wrong.
Wow.
Like something's actually wrong.
Yeah.
If I'm just an event planner and a service manager and a content creator, this just isn't what I signed up for.
Yeah.
This is just not what was in my heart. But the funny thing is, George, it's pretty much all that the training we'd done had told us to do. So I remember we flew to this conference in the Gold Coast, this church planting conference. And if I was doing one now, I'd almost do teaching on everything opposite we heard there. But seriously, the emphasis of the conference was do a bigger Sunday, have better music, have the most amazing, pristine experience, make sure that everything now, like it's like we have great Sundays at Nova. We have an amazing worship team, super creative. If you walked into a Sunday service, you'd say this is really strong. And so I'm not against any of that, obviously, like, you know, but actually, like when I think about it, really the emphasis of that entire training had nothing to do with people.
Yeah, wow.
It was really just about impressing people to be a part of a brand.
Yeah, wow.
And when you're young and inexperienced, you hear that stuff and you think, oh, I guess that's just how it is. this is just about impressing people. And so I think with good intentions, our first year of church was like, well, we're young, we don't know anything, so we should just do what these guys say we should do.
Yeah.
Like we should really make sure the message is perfect and make sure the music's amazing and make sure the experience is so incredible and just like that's what it's all about. And it's like, so we did that, but then it was like, this sucks.
Yeah, wow.
If this is it, I'm out.
Yeah.
Like, and I remember praying, and one of the key words God gave me in that season was, if you keep building Nova the way you're building it now, you're going to hate the church you built in 10 years.
Sheesh.
And that was so strong and such a burden that I'm like, I've actually got to find the answer. We have to solve this problem because we're not happy. We're not enjoying this. And it's like, if we just have a 6 set and a polished 3-pointer and the place is full of people, but none of their lives are changing.
It's not it.
And they're not growing.
Yeah.
I'm so disinterested in that.
Yeah.
Because the only thing that makes all this worthwhile is people getting impacted and transformed. And it's like, I just don't see how that's going to happen from Christian karaoke.
So true.
And just a Sunday. So it just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And I think God allowed that because he wanted to take us on a journey. And like, as a pastor, as a leader, leading anything, you can't take people anywhere that you're not going yourself. So God had to take us there. And I think allow us to get frustrated. And, I remember going on this, this Zoom call with one of our mentors in Sydney, who's now like a really strong, close friend. And one of the things he said to me when he was talking about Nova is he said, Nova is like a Ferrari with a lawnmower engine.
Wow.
So he's like, it looks good on the outside, but on the inside, there's no strength.
Shivers.
There's no power. There's nothing to actually drive it and take it forward because there's no discipleship. And I was on this Zoom call, man, and I was blubbering like a baby. Like, it was like I had an encounter with God on this Zoom call.
Yeah.
And literally after that, I was like, I'm not satisfied anymore. We have to figure out a way of doing this. And it was actually a bit of a journey we had to walk alone in some ways, because most of the guys, like, and I think one of the hard things about leadership is, it's easier when you have to, like unteach things that someone else taught someone.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's not right. Let me teach you what's right. What's hard is when you have to unteach things that you taught someone.
Wow.
So we're a year in and we're like, like we've been teaching some things that aren't right or are unbalanced.
Yeah.
Or have been applied in the wrong way. And so there's some things we've got to unlearn right now. And not everyone was down for that, man. Because it was like, we signed up for like a Sunday-centric church.
Yeah.
And this is sounding different to what you said it was going to be. And you said it was going to be that, Sam. So like, I mean, this would give you an example. And you were there, you saw this stuff and you come on the full journey with us, George. But like, I remember sitting down in our living room and showing our team a documentary, right, about this church that had started in America.
Yep.
And the way the church had blown up was by them dropping thousands of Easter eggs out of a helicopter onto an oval.
Yep.
And all these people bought their friends and they grabbed Easter eggs, and it's like from then the church took off, which is probably a really oversimplification of what happened. But it actually put this mentality in me, which Australia is so different to America.
Very different.
No one here is looking for a church. No one's waking up on Sunday like, I'm looking for a church. That just doesn't happen like it does in the US. But I remember seeing this, and I remember literally saying to our team, we just have to find our egg drop moment.
Like the helicopter.
You know what we need, guys? We need a helicopter. No, I never said that. but it was like we're waiting for this like massive attractional moment that's going to really send this thing somewhere. And it was like, once God had highlighted to me, really that we were walking on the wrong path, that stuff almost became a meme. Like, it was like, to think that we were wanting to go that way now is kind of
Yep.
scary. And again, I'm not saying like we run big outreach events. We
We
just had
do, yeah.
a really big outreach event this weekend with all of our youth.
Yep.
We had 50 young people saved.
Crazy.
Incredible.
Yep.
And it's exciting, it's attractional and all of that. But the heartbeat and what's driving it
Yeah.
is completely different.
Literally, yeah.
And so I remember, when God had really spoken to us about, no, we need to really like, yes, keep doing things well, but we need to change gears and really put as much energy into discipling people
Yeah.
as we are into running services.
Yeah.
That was really when the gear shift happened.
Yeah.
And like that moment, Hannah's actually putting it really nicely when we told the team. But like that moment where we said, hey, we're really gonna start taking people on a journey of discipleship, and we're calling everyone on our course and we're calling you to do this with us.
Yep.
Like we want you to sow in, we want you to give yourself to people
Yeah.
and pour into them on a journey. Multiple of our team looked us straight in the eye that day and said, we don't want to be a part of that. And it was actually the start of a journey for some people leaving our church because what they signed up for was a Sunday experience, not life on life discipleship, not actually journeying with people, being in their world, being in their life. And it was like a line in the sand moment retrospectively. We didn't necessarily know it at the time. That really was like, there's sometimes where you just get a stake in the ground in your conviction and go, this is who we are now. We're never going back. That was that moment.
Wow.
And so when we started in our house with these discipleship groups, you talk about like, what does a pastor need to do to build a discipleship culture? Well, the pastor has to do it.
Yeah.
And the pastor
so
has
true.
to set it. Like you can't outsource a core value to someone else.
So true. So true.
You have to model it first. And yes, sons and daughters will rise up who'll be able to take that and manage that later on and help you move that forward. But like, it's got to come from the heart of the pastor, and it's got to come from the value system of the part, and the pastor has to model it. And so one of the things we did in that season was like, that Nova was maybe, 70 people or so at that stage. And we had, we could do a whole podcast on this one, George, but like we'd appointed people into different roles probably too soon, and
wow.
and giving people titles too soon and stuff like that. But we decided like if we're gonna like replant the church with discipleship and do this again, we're not gonna pick who we're gonna disciple based on what their role or title is in the church. We're just gonna do it based on hunger.
Yeah.
So it was like, who are the hungriest ones?
Yeah.
Let's just ask them to come along. And let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
And so, and really, it was the most transformative, amazing 6 months with just those first 10 boys. And from that point, we did one round with those first 10. They all invited one person the next time. We did it again.
Yeah.
And then we just kept multiplying it, every 6 months until that new culture of discipleship basically ate the old culture alive.
Wow.
And I remember the atmosphere changing in our Sunday services.
Yep, definitely.
After about, I don't know if you remember this, but like after about a year of just going hard on this, it was like, there is like a hunger in this room.
Yep.
There is like a roar in the people.
Yeah.
There is this devotion, this sacrifice, this like these things. Like if you walk into Nova now, I think one of the things that will hit you the hardest is the atmosphere.
That's right. Yeah.
And people go, where does that come from? It's not because you instruct people on how to behave in a service. It's because there's a deep-rooted system of like discipleship and hunger and sacrifice and vulnerability that opens something up and enables it to be more than just a gathering, but something electric and powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love how you were saying, even in the story, the origin story of the Nova Law, the origin story of this switch and this replant. I love how you mentioned in there that you had a powerful encounter with God, and that's where it stemmed from. Like, I love the not just the idea, but the conviction behind it, that it wasn't just like, oh, we didn't like what we were seeing, so we decided to change some things, but it was actually birthed out of an encounter with God. Why do you think it's so important for people to have an encounter with God before they make a big shift?
Yeah, because I think the danger is when you hear stuff like this is, I think one of the worst things that leaders can do is kind of be changing their vision every 10 minutes.
Yes.
You know, and you see places like that where it's like the pastor goes away to a conference and now they've come back and the vision of the church has changed. But the next year it's different vision and different. And it's just all over the place. You don't want that.
No.
And really what that's a sign of is like, I think a lot of the time people are looking for a silver bullet or a method that's going to work and make things work. But I think everything good has to be rooted and grounded in an encounter with God.
So true. Yeah.
And everything ultimately that like has worked about our lives in our church has come from that place.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just cannot get by without an encounter with the Lord and without him speaking to you in a way that is, you know, catalytic to your life and changing things. And I think for us, like, I know that one of the things our environment is known for is discipleship, but you cannot divorce discipleship from the presence of God.
Wow. Wow.
Because the presence of God is what opens the heart. The presence of God is what enables people to be ready to grow. The presence of God is what sets captives free.
That's right.
The presence of God is what breaks the yoke. So you have to have that culture of presence has to precede that place of discipleship. And so I think that one thing we've always had from day one was that culture of presence and that value and that hunger and that desire for the presence of God.
Yeah.
And that is, I'd say, like the foundation and the soft soil that enables you to be able to receive these things from the Lord. But I'm telling you, man, like every good thing that's happened at Nova has come from an encounter with God.
Yeah.
That's it. And so you can be like, you know, well, I just need to get the right spreadsheet or the right method or the right course. And I'm like, they're all helpful tools, but you've got to start with, do you really have a conviction?
Yeah. So true.
Has God really spoken to you? Is there something that you have from God that's saying, you know, I know this is what you're calling me to.
Yeah.
You know, because like even then, I mean, I know we haven't been around that long, but I mean, like discipleship is kind of like becoming like a trendy word at the moment.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, you know, it's not, for us, this isn't a trend or like a buzzword we're jumping on. It's like a conviction that's been birthed from an encounter with God.
That's right. Yeah.
Hard forged. Yeah. And, you know, we're seeing the fruit now, but there's no shortcuts to this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's so important. And I love that you mentioned in there that encounter led to conviction, because it's like on this journey of discipleship, you're going to have so many people break your heart. You're going to have so many people hurt you. You're going to have so many people walk away. All these different emotions. You're going to have like the highest highs and the lowest lows, but it's your conviction that keeps you in the game. It's your conviction that keeps you discipling. It's your conviction that allows you to go again, even though that person that you discipled for 3 years, 10 years, 20 years let you down. It's the conviction that keeps you going. And I love that you're talking about that was all centered around an encounter with the presence of God. And so I think that's awesome. But let's switch gears for just a second. We're going to end the episode in just a moment. But I wanted to ask you guys, for all of our lead pastors, youth pastors, pastors of locations, pastors anywhere, with those who are in the space of shifting gears. In fact, it's probably more so for lead pastors and senior pastors this moment. But what would you say to a lead pastor that right now is watching this or listening to this going, man, we really need to shift gears. We really need to shift the focus. Like, we've been doing things one way, but we really need to start doing things another way. What would be something that you would not recommend, but you'd call them into, or something that is worth thinking about in this moment? Is it to go into the prayer closet and to seek the presence of God and get that conviction? Is it to find mentors? Like, what would you guys do if you were back a couple of years ago before the Zoom call, but hungry for that change? What would you do if you were in someone else's shoes?
I think definitely getting that conviction, not just like, oh, that's a good idea, but also that conviction of discipleship of like, this is what I want for my people. Like, I don't want, because that was one thing that we realized like, as you mentioned about when we're raising, well, we're not really raising anyone. We have shallow people in church, in the sense of like, they need us to fight their battles. They need us to give them peace. They need us to give them the scripture to fight that thought or that situation or whatever. And it's like we need to bring people deep. Like we can't raise babies. We must bring them to maturity. And so
awesome.
Getting that conviction, but I guess my word of advice would be in the sense of what you're talking about of like sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you don't feel like they're opening up properly or they walk away or they let you down. It's just like we can take courage in knowing that like Jesus did this before us. Like he's gone
so
before
true.
us. He's shown us the way. He's shown us that he, even as God, perfect, he didn't do anything wrong, yet he still had people let him down or walk away or give up or whatever. Knowing that we can't control the outcome all of the time, but knowing that because Jesus is our example, we can do it and we don't need to be afraid that we will be let down sometimes, but that the reward will come because you'll be raising sons and daughters. And I know that we're talking about that later, but like that heart. And I think the reward of not just like putting on a great event, but the reward of the depth and richness that you have with people that you're discipling and the depth and richness of seeing your spiritual sons and daughters like grow and thrive and get married and have babies and like, do you know what I mean? Like just win at life. It's like, church is so much better, harder at the beginning because you're doing the real hard work and really chipping away at the vulnerability and chipping away at finding out who they are and like really bringing them. But like when you start to see life come from that, there's just so much more joy no matter how many people you get in the room.
So true.
Seeing people grow in their maturity and their love for Jesus and all of that. But also, that'd be my word of advice. But then also what you were saying before, it's just like, just start small.
Yeah.
It would be like, okay, how can you practically birth this? Okay, who are your 5 or 10 most hungry people that you can see, not necessarily their position right now or what they're doing, but like, are they hungry for Jesus? Are they hungry to be discipled? Choose them and single-handedly disciple them.
Yeah, that's great.
Don't try and find somebody else to do it. Just start with them and then go from there. But just start small, start with your most hungry and it will multiply.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
So good.
Do you want to add anything or? No, that's it.
Love that.
Yeah.
I think that is awesome. Even the practical steps that you were saying and adding there at the end, Pastor Hannah, like finding those 5, those 10 that are really hungry and investing into them. And I love the theme that has kind of like been all over this episode today of like, you can't outsource discipleship. You have to be involved and do it yourself. And so I've loved this episode. It's awesome. We're going to end with a question that we ask every single episode, but where is God discipling your heart at the moment? Maybe if you want to start, Pastor Hannah, that'd be awesome.
I'm holding the microphone.
Yeah.
So I'm still in my Esther study.
Oh, I love that.
Right?
Yep.
But I was trying to think about how specifically what specifically about it at the moment he's discipling me towards. And I encouraged the worship team with this yesterday. But really, like as a leader, I don't think you ever make it to a place where you're like, I've got this, like, and I know exactly what I'm doing and all of those sorts of things. But there was a scripture that really stood out to me. It was a line. It's from the story about when Jesus feeds the 5,000, and he says to Philip, how much money is it going to cost to feed all of these people? And that it says that Jesus was testing Philip because he knew what he was about to do.
Wow.
And so he was testing him and saying like, what's the need? It's way beyond you.
Yeah.
Like it's actually way beyond what you're capable of achieving because you don't have anything in your hands, but that who he used was the boy with the fish and the loaves, and that what he had was so insignificant compared to the need, but that Jesus didn't even need him because he says he knew what he was about to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So Jesus was going to do it.
Yeah.
But that he wanted to use what the little boy had in his innocence of like, God, I know that it's good, not me. I know that it's not me that is going to feed them, but this is what I have. And so you use this. Yep. And so it's like knowing that no matter where I step my foot, that even when I'm like, I don't know, it's going to cost so much, or this is going to cost this much time, God, or is going to cost this much brilliance and I just don't have it, God, it's just like, oh, it's okay because I know what I'm going to do. I just need you to just know that I'm faithful and know that I'm going to do it. And so let me just use you as, you know, as innocent and whatever you have. I don't mind what you have. It could be like half of what the little boy had, but just give me what you have and let me use that.
Yeah.
For such time as this, let me be God and know that I'm faithful to be everything that you need me to be. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
Love that. Love that. Pastor Sam?
Oh, well, thank you. I think for me, I've really been digging into Exodus at the moment. And I think there's just, I mean, Moses' journey is just crazy. And I feel like every week at the moment, God's showing me something different. But one of the chapters I've been in at the moment is Exodus 14, I believe it is. And essentially, that's actually Exodus 17. And Moses has basically been leading the people in the wilderness. You kind of know the story. There's this battle that comes upon them with the Amalekites, and essentially he sends Joshua and his men down to kind of fight them with the sword, and he goes up the mountain with the staff, and he's got to keep the staff raised on the mountain. And one of the things that I've been so challenged of this season, because we're really in a season of growth right now as a church, so there's just the services are growing. There's a lot of new people with a lot of moving parts, a lot of things happening. But Moses was found on the mountain with the staff while he'd empowered his sons to go and fight with the swords. And one of the things that God's really speaking to me about is not trading my staff for a sword. So essentially like not getting down off the mountain because of the pressure to get involved in the ground battle. But the best thing I can actually do for the people is to stay up the mountain and stay hearing from God and stay with a higher perspective to see kind of what's coming and what's next. I was telling Hannah this, but I actually did a study this 3-month period in Exodus. And in this 3-month period, Moses spends 88% of the time up the mountain.
Wow.
In this period. And it was so challenging for me because essentially the more intense things get, the more demand there is or pull you think there is. You know, I've got to go down and be a part of this. I got to pick up the sword. I got to fight. But actually, the most catalytic time in Exodus happened when Moses was with God.
Yeah, that's right.
And the greatest blessing that you can be to people, you're leading in spirit of God more. So my biggest challenge right now, as our world gets busier and things are taking off and there's more happening, is actually to be up the mountain more and not to put down the staff for a sword, but just to stay in that place and in trust and empower more in this next season. So that's something we're really working on at the moment is like we've just got to keep empowering our sons like you to go after you know, the things that God's put in their heart and to believe that we're going to overcome and keep winning. That's right. So that's something we're thinking about. Yeah.
So good. Love it. Well, what a great episode today. Did you guys enjoy talking about the story of Nova?
I love it.
So good.
Culture Shapers Church.
Culture Shapers. Wow. Wow.
Doesn't quite have the same ring, does it?
Thank you, God, for Pastor Hannah's wisdom in the Nova and Culture Shapers debate.
So good.
But hey, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We're so glad that you've tuned in, whether that's on Spotify or maybe you're watching us on YouTube at the moment, but we're so glad that you tuned in. Hey, do us a massive favor if you can. Why don't you subscribe, follow, share the episode, like, comment. If you got any questions, sling them our way. We'd love to answer them. But we're so glad that you tuned in with us today. What a great day it has been. And we can't wait to see you on episode 3. We'll see you then. See ya.